David Foster Wallace was obsessed with television, so much so that he called himself a television addict. He would watch for 12 to 16 hours a day for months at a time during his life. And it was such a problem that he didn't have a TV in his house for at least the last 10 years of his life. And today we are going to be hearing Wallace talk about how TV's sole purpose is to be liked, to be 100% entertainment, to not challenge us in any way. Last night, the Super Bowl was on, and there was zero challenge or learning or growth available in that. Sports can teach you teamwork, playing fair, how to work hard and set goals, and things like that. But after a while, you learn that, and then sports are just for fun. And the same goes with television. But before we get too deep into all that, let us hear from Wallace first. Quote, "One of the main goals of art is simply to entertain, give people sheer pleasure, except to what end? This pleasure giving. Because, of course, TV's real agenda is to be liked. Because if you like what you are seeing, you'll stay tuned. TV is completely unabashed about this. It's its sole reason. And sometimes when I look at my own stuff, I feel like I absorb too much of this reason. I'll catch myself thinking up gags or trying formal stunt pilotry and see that none of this stuff is really in the service of the story itself. It's serving the rather darker purpose of communicating to the reader, hey, look at me. Have a look. What a good writer I am. Like me. Now, to an extent, there's no way to escape this altogether, because an author needs to demonstrate some sort of skill or merit so that the reader will trust her. There's some weird, delicate, I trust you not to fuck up upon me relationship between the reader and the writer, and both have to sustain it. There's an unignorable line between demonstrating skill and charm to gain trust for the story versus simply showing off. It can become an exercise in trying to get the reader to like and admire you instead of an exercise in creative art. I think TV promulgates the idea that good art is just art which makes people like and depend on the vehicle that brings them the art. This seems like a poisonous lesson for a would-be artist to grow up with. And one consequence is that if the artist is excessively dependent on simply being liked, so that her true end isn't the work, but in a certain audience's good opinion, she's going to develop a terrific hostility to that audience, simply because she has given all her power away to them. It's the familiar love-hate syndrome of seduction. I don't really care what it is I say, I care only that you like it. But since your good opinion is the sole arbiter of my success and worth, you have tremendous power over me, and I fear you, and I hate you for it. This dynamic isn't exclusive to art, but I often think I can see it in myself and in other young writers. This desperate desire to please coupled with a kind of hostility to the reader. And this is really deep stuff by Wallace. And let's start at the start and work our way through it. So, first of all, of course, we have to compete as writers with television. But, oh wait, this was written in the mid-90s. Now we are competing with Apple Vision Pro and TikTok and all these other mediums that not only are much more entertaining for the average consumer than reading, but actually ruin the ability to read. It's almost like if, a comparable analogy is like TikTok to readers is like an athlete having an unlimited supply of fast food or the worst food possible in his kitchen. There's just constantly deliveries of food coming. And you can, every time you look at your phone, there is a delivery and you can say, okay, I want to tap into this or not tap into this. And obviously there are things like YouTube and this channel and educational content out there, but 99% of viewership on social media platforms and YouTube are not educational. And television is a somewhat interesting medium because of the idea of the commercial. So like last night I watched a little bit of the Super Bowl with my wife, just like the end. I looked at the score and saw that it was super close. I was like, okay, I'll tune in. I'll see what's going on. And as someone who never watches TV, like I don't, have cable or any streaming services, I was shocked at like the commercials. And even though these are the best commercials of the year, it was just like, oh my God, it was worse than seeing Taylor Swift on camera time after time. And I felt like those commercials were ruining the pleasurable experience that I wanted to be able to have with the Super Bowl. And I think that probably is one of the reasons why television is dying, because you have these breaks. Suddenly you're watching your show. Let's say you watch CNN or Fox News, and suddenly you have this weird commercial of, for thyroid medication. But if you just log on and watch your favorite political commentator on YouTube or throw on a Spotify podcast, you might hear some ads, but you can skip through them. Just a couple clicks with your finger and you're already through the ad. And if you're doing something like shorts or reels, you can just blow through ads and you never have to stop scrolling. It can be a pure pleasurable experience that's actually being catered to you with content that you like. That's why I don't have Instagram or any of that on my phone or a tablet, and I actually block it. Most of the time on my computer, I have to use a password to log on and be able to post my content on Instagram. And everyone, go follow me on Instagram. I am posting daily reels, daily poetry that I have written, and a ton of other cool stuff. And so, if you want some positivity in your Instagram feed and educational content, then go and follow me. The link is down in the description below. But when I am on Instagram, there is just a ton of great content. I get some book content, but I get a bunch of jujitsu and skiing content. I keep up with all these athletes that I used to really look up to. And it's endless. Like, I could probably spend 20 or 30 minutes on there a day just seeing new content that's just being released in the mediums that I like. And so now I am competing with that as a writer. I am competing with also the heightening of standards and expectations and shock factors that readers want to see. And I struggle with this all the time. I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, if I make the story more shocking, then people are probably going to like it more. It's going to be able to kind of hook them in. But then I'm going to be disliked. These characters aren't going to necessarily be that likable. And it's going to kind of ruin the story if I'm kind of front loading this with too much suspense or too much kind of craziness. And we kind of have a mixed perception because if we're trying to hit it big time, if you're trying to be able to sell books to even tens of thousands of people, most of those people are going to be the common reader. You know, I would love to imagine that all of the reading audience out there are just literary fiction lovers, but they are going to be wanting something that's going to entice them. And if you've transcended out of the romance, fantasy, mystery genre, then you're going to have to rely on your story. Really, it's not about prose anymore because, you know, a lot of people can't process good prose and that may push a lot of people away. But here I am right now engaging in what Wallace is talking about that, hey, I want to be liked. Hey guys, look at me. It's right conscious. I'm so nice and accepting toward everybody. But in actuality, if you guys have listened to this program enough, you know, the hundreds of videos I've made, I shit on people all of the time. And it's honestly needed. I mean, that's what we cannot fall into this trap that television and corporate media and all the celebrities we see on TV who are very monotone and just never rock the boat. We cannot fall into that. And we also don't need to think that we need to be polarized because a lot of people think that polarizing yourself and being authentic is just following the way of like political pundits. Like, hey, there are all these political, all this political stuff I disagree with. Like, I hate Trump or I love Trump and hate Biden. And I'm going to make that my personality and polarize in that way. But to polarize as an artist, you're going to have to go much deeper than that. To actually be an authentic human being, political issues really don't matter to our everyday consciousness. Unless you are willing to go all in on those issues and actually go and do something and make a difference, then you are just wasting your time and energy. And you could be polarizing and pushing people away and trying to escape this idea of needing to be liked in a much different manner. And I know we're getting a little meta here because as writers, we are the people who have like the VCR machine after the DVD has come out and be like, hey, it's better quality or like it worked better. See this little, you can hit rewind on it. Really, it's great. Or we're the Linux people. Like here I am promoting Linux, telling all the Mac PC users, you guys have no idea what's going on. And so if we look at the bottom here, Wallace kind of gets us back on track. It can become an exercise in trying to get the reader to like and admire you instead of an exercise in creative art. I don't like Infinite Jest at times. Sometimes it's very hard to get through. I don't like sometimes what Cormac McCarthy does, but he has earned my trust. Just through the writing style and how beautiful, especially the start of the books are. Like even if you look at like Infinite Jest, the first couple chapters aren't too hard. They're pretty easy to get through. Then I'm like, okay, I trust this guy. I can see. I had a fan of the show the other day. He started reading Infinite Jest. And he was like, wow, I could already tell in a couple chapters that this guy is a great writer, and it's going to be a hard slog through all this, but I'm ready. And I feel the same way about a lot of my favorite authors, especially a lot of these kind of postmodernists, the Don DeLillos and the Thomas Pynchons and all these other guys. And so once again, we have to take the third option. You can't write for the audience. You can't sit there and be like, I'm going to write to be liked. But you can't sit there and polarize and say, I'm just going to write how I want to write. This is my opinion. I'm writing for myself. Art is for the self. No, not one writer in all of history has ever taken that attitude. It's actually crazy to say, but people think You need to write for yourself. Art doesn't matter. Don't write for the audience at all. What do you guys think revision is? You have to sit there and put yourself in the head of your audience and imagine someone else who is reading your work. That's called writing for the audience. If it was just you do what the Beats did. Jack Kerouac, you would just sit and write it and then release it. But Jack Kerouac will fade into obscurity and just be kind of a legend in the 10-year or even less decade of beat writing that people will see on Wikipedia, and that's the only way he'll get viewers. He's not going to get viewers like, "Oh my god, this is the greatest book of all time." And so the third route here is actually learning to be a great reviser and learning how to work the strings of a reader's emotion, something that TV cannot do. With TV's lack of being able to access interiority, with its pictorial representation of what's going on, it has a lesser innate ability to be able to draw us in. Because when I'm reading a book, first of all, I get to be in the reader's head, or excuse me, the characters' heads, and I get to picture what they look like myself. And it's a journey. It's a journey of imagination. And now we finally get to Wallace's last point, though. And so I just said here, just focus on the work and be empathetic to the reader, kind of hit the middle ground here. But Wallace says, quote, "If the artist is excessively dependent on simply being liked, so that her true end isn't in the work, but in a certain audience's good opinion, she's going to develop a terrific hostility to that audience, simply because she has given all her power away to them." And it sucks, you guys. I understand. I hear people complain about this all the time. They say, "I don't want to have to micro all my sentences. I don't want to have to sit here and revise my book for 4 or 5 years. It's already good enough. The story's already in there." And I agree. I look at their book and it seems like a great plot, and the characters seem really cool, and it's in cool locations and has great jokes in it, but I'm not going to read it. I get sent a novel, even though I say don't send me novels, every single day. And all of them look good, but I can tell that they did not spend enough time on revision, on thinking through these things and learning how to draw me in as a reader. And so I'm not tuning in. And so while you're sitting there for 5 years, 1 year, even 2 years, revising your book, and then no one wants it, no one wants to read it. You might have to do that for a decade or two, and then you finally get a book published, and that makes you $10,000, and you've been telling everyone that you're going to be the next Frank Herbert. Then you're going to start developing a hostility toward the audience. You're going to go out, and you're going to see the mud people at the grocery store, the golems, who are sitting and shoving hot Cheetos down their throat and going home and like bathing in lard, and as they're watching TikTok on 4 walls all around them, and you're going to be like, wait, these are the people I'm trying to impress? You're going to go to a writing conference and see the fakest people you've ever met in your entire life, or like a reading, people with scarves on who are acting like this and like vying for attention. And that is your readership. These are the people that you're needing to gain approval from. These are the people you're sitting at your desk for, and as life is happening outside and grinding out sentences for, and you will become hostile. Sad to say it. All of us have been there. I just got out some of my hostility about the modern reading audience right now. But you guys just have to remember that there are real people out there. I can't guarantee you that all that work is going to make you $1 million or put you in the history books, but there are people out there, just like how maybe you appreciate what I'm doing right now, who are going to love you, who are going to support you, and you're going to develop a sea of positive comments of people emailing you and saying, "Hey man, like I got an email the other day and it was like, I haven't read in 10 years and I saw your videos, and the past 6 months, I didn't just get into reading. I started writing for the first time and journaling, and that led to all this other stuff." That's who I'm making videos for. That's who I'm writing for. And it's fun to sit and make jokes, the golems, it's fun to make fun of those people. And there needs to be a little bit of that in there to keep that bitterness, to kind of keep that edge, to keep us driving and not, fall into the camp of just trying to be liked. You have to keep that wall up. But you also have to remember everybody else, that the people who are going to read your work and take it seriously, most likely are the type of person you want to sit down and have a conversation with for 3 hours, who would be your friend if they lived in the same, town as you. And so, in my opinion, we just have to, once again, as I've been saying almost every single video, be a reviser. Think deeply about these things. Take it slow. Come up with a plan. Come up with a strategy to connect with people, to do more than just your writing. Find a good audience, build a good audience, and then you're not going to fall into a lot of these traps that people like Wallace had to, because he didn't have the opportunity to create his own audience. Wallace Back in the day, you published a book and then people read it. Now I could find people who would like my book. I could find people on Instagram who I think I would like my stuff and DM them and be like, "Yo, check this out if you're interested." I could join writing groups that are specifically for my genre and just all online and never have to leave my house. Maybe never even have to get on a camera or talk on a microphone. And those people will be honest to you. They'll be judging you against people you want to be judged against because the modern, if you just publish a book and 200,000 people read it, you're being judged against Colleen Hoover and, Colson Whitehead and random people you don't want to be writing like anyway. And so that is my message to all of you guys. Start finding that audience now. Start making friends with them. Start giving, providing services. If you're not ready to share your own stuff, then start revising people's stuff. Become friends with them and they will return back to you in time. I have a whole sea of contacts for all, that's one thing that you could say university education gives you. I have a whole sea of contacts for that time and all the other people I met kind of when I was going to local writing groups and stuff. That when I want to publish something or like really need something revised, easily 100 people. And then obviously hundreds of you guys on the channel would hook me up too. And you are all people that I trust and I know will give me a fair shake. And so I think that's the end goal for us as writers is to develop that. And then if we get approval from our own community, then who cares what everyone else says?